Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. My name is Terry Lipshetz. I'm a senior producer at Lee, and joining the program as a host with Bruce Miller, who is the editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. Chris Lay, the voice you normally heard at the opening and throughout the show, has moved on from the program, and Bruce was on assignment in sunny Los Angeles. So we decided to take a short break, but now we are back with a set of programs as we march closer toward the Oscars. Bruce, how are you today?
Terry. First of all, sunny California. It was not sunny. It rained the whole time. And I can't tell you that I even got out of the hotel. That's
really?
Yeah. I did get to the Oscar Museum, which was fun to do. And we have a thing there where you can actually hold the Oscar. $15 is how much it costs, and get your picture taken. And then they do like a little video of you accepting the Oscar.
Oh, wow.
Which was cool. It was heavy. They said it's 8 pounds.
Wow.
And the Oscar that I held was one that was handed out last year at the Oscars. They do fake ones, you know, when they're doing the show. They'll hand that to the people and then they pull it away. And then in another room, they give them their real Oscar with the right the serial number on it, so that then they know where it went. But this was one of the ones that was used in the process of the production. So it was cool to do. It was, I mean, you know, come on, throw me an Oscar, I'll do it. And I acted like I was so humble and everything. You'll never get to see this video because I look like a real squirt. But it was fun to see. It was fun to do. And the museum itself has a lot of fun stuff. There's Bruce the Shark from Jaws hanging over the top. There is a 3-story backdrop of Mount Rushmore, which was used in North by Northwest. Wow. And unbelievable to see. And then R2-D2 is there, C-3PO is there. So there's a lot of stuff. If you're a movie fan, it's a must visit, I think.
That's cool. Now, when you accepted, did they play you off? Did your speech go too long?
No, I was able to finish the speech, and it was a lot of thank yous, you know?
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so it was fun to do. And then I looked at the pictures that they took and I thought, gee, maybe I need a redo on this one, because I don't know if I really looked the best, but there you go.
I only made it to LA one time. It was for an online news association conference a number of years ago, but the hotel was right next door to Nakatomi Plaza. So I got to see where, you know, that Christmas Story 30 some odd years ago, and they rebuilt it nicely. It looks really well these days.
You know, now you're going to think this is just crazy, but I figured it out once. I spent 3 years of my life in Los Angeles.
Wow.
If you add up all the times I go there to visit and do interviews, 3 years. 2 years in New York. So, hey, have I been in Iowa that long? I don't know. I have all these other years that I can total up. But tell everybody about your background, because we want to know how devoted you are to the movies. If you're not devoted, then I'm going to be teaching you like it's movies 101.
Yeah. So, you know, well, we're going to be partners here, but I wanted to be clear, like, I'm Robin to your Batman. I'm Chewbacca to your Han Solo. So I'm Cliff Clavin to your Norm Peterson. So,
but Mandalorian and I'm Yoda. You know how that
exactly, right. No, I'm a big movie fan, a big TV fan. I have not gotten out to the movies as often as I would like in the last couple of years in the COVID, you know, this COVID era, right? Yeah, but spend a lot of time streaming movies with the family. You know, I think I mentioned to you previously, I did get to Avatar 2. I did get to Top Gun Maverick. So I have been back to the theater a couple of times since 2020, but with the kids and the family, a lot of time devoted to Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max and all that. So definitely been around.
Thanks to streaming, everybody now can be kind of an insider.
Yeah,
because there is so much content available that you're not just kind of watching 1 or 2 movies a year that get nominated. You could see all of them if you looked for it. You can find them. Avatar. Let me ask you on that. Did you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of it?
I probably should have, but I held out until the end.
Oh, I had to go. I thought, you know, when I'm taking a big drink in there, and you always have to gauge the size of the drink.
Yeah.
Because the drink can determine how long you're going to be sitting there. And that Avatar, that really was a 2-bathroom break movie.
but I did persevere and I made it to the end. I enjoyed it. It was a good popcorn movie. I enjoy, I hope it doesn't take 15 years until the next one comes out.
No, they've already finished the other ones.
Okay.
In fact, Edie Falco, who is in this just very, very briefly, told me that she had already done 3 and 4.
Okay.
And it's like, really? Or what? She says, you just go in, you do your part, you don't know where it's going to land. It could be in one episode, it could be in all of them, but you do it for like a couple of weeks and then they shoot you doing this stuff and you're done. I think they're going to be sooner than you think. I don't know that we'll go over next year, but a couple of years and we'll see another Avatar.
That's good because I enjoyed it. It's a good, I think it's a good franchise type of movie, and it's been a while since, with Star Wars not doing any big movies in the last few years, it's kind of nice to have that sci-fi thriller back out there.
Yeah, so you are an Avatar fan?
I am, yeah. I enjoyed the first one. I don't know if I enjoyed this one quite as much as the original, but I thought it was fun. It's a good popcorn movie.
Unobtainium. Come on. You got to tell me that way. Couldn't we have come up with a better name for
Probably
this? Yeah. And those whale-like creatures that are in Avatar 2. Come on. You could do a little more with that, but I digress. It is what it is. I don't want it to win Best Picture, so please don't start pulling in that direction.
That's not going to happen. I did enjoy seeing Edie Falco back on the big screen because I am a big Sopranos fan. I used to, and you probably don't know this, but when I worked in New Jersey, I actually wrote a weekly column about the Sopranos where I would look at what happened. I'd analyze it. I'd summarize who might have been taken out, sleeps with the fishes that week,
right.
A little quote of the week, and then I would try to kind of predict where the series was going. So I've done a little bit of entertainment reporting in the past myself.
Well, I'm counting on that. That's great. But did you think it'd end the way that it ended, or did you say,
You mean like fade go into black and then that was it?
Yeah. Did you?
No, that's crushing. That was kind of I wanted something. I wanted a resolution to that, whether it was prison or a hit or something. I just didn't want to end it like that.
It leaves it in your hands, though. You can decide how you wanted it to end, and there you're good.
Yeah. And speaking of the Sopranos, I had another bit of a surprise during the Christmas break because my wife and I, huge fans of The White Lotus, and we binged season 2 during Christmas week, and Michael Imperioli, Christopher Moltisanti was back. Yeah.
Right. Did you like it as much as the first White Lotus or not?
I did love it. It wasn't quite as mysterious for me just because we knew that there would be some level of plot twist, because you knew that it's a suspenseful show and something is going to happen.
Somebody's dying.
Somebody's dying. Who will it be? Exactly.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. And I think maybe they shouldn't follow their own formula too closely.
Right.
Where, you start with, somebody's dead. Who is it? And then you start introducing all the characters. Okay, I get it. But I do have some ideas about the next White Lotus that'll be coming. And I do think that husband that Jennifer Coolidge has will be making a return appearance.
Okay, Greg, right? That was
right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll see what happens with that. But I love that kind of stuff. And isn't that weird how we get kind of attuned to let's just watch it all?
Yeah, it's
really.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny. My wife and I were actually having this conversation last night because we started watching How I Met Your Father on Hulu because we enjoyed the first How I Met Your Mother. And I kind of forgot that they actually did season 1. So we binged through season 1 of How I Met Your Father and then realized that like season 2 just started. So we watched episode 1 of season 2 a week ago. And then just last night we watched episode 2. And then after we got done, we kicked over to Fleischman is in Trouble. But my wife says like, I like this show. I think I like this show, but I don't want to wait every single week for it. And I said, you know what? I kind of agree. So I think we might actually put How I Met Your Father back on hold and then wait until we get, the remaining episodes and then just kind of hit them in a string.
Yeah, I like the concept of gorging. where I'll
Yeah.
just have it all.
Yeah.
And then I feel kind of complete at the end where you go, okay, I can move on. I don't need to worry about that anymore.
And we did that also with House of the Dragon, because my wife she's a sci-fi fan like I am, but never watched Game of Thrones, which kind of shocked me. And I'm like, honey, you got to watch this show. It's really good. You'll like it. And she's like, all right, I guess. And then I told her House of the Dragon. I'm like, you and I are going to watch House of the Dragon, so you have to watch Game of Thrones. So we went back over the summer and binged every single episode of the original. So
Oh my
she got
God.
caught up. But it was crazy from my end because it's been so long since I had seen episode 1 of season 1 that now I'm watching everything from start to finish over the course of about 3 months when we were watching these. And it's really fascinating to watch like an entire series in, just a matter of months.
And you know that it took them years to do that. And,
Right.
like, okay, yeah, we can be very disposable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
A couple characters they changed. I can't remember the character, but it was one of Khaleesi's advisors who they actually changed actors. And I didn't realize it when it happened. But when you're watching it back to back, it's like, well, that actor just changed.
Look at Harry Potter.
Right.
A
Yeah.
death happens there. They go, well, wait a minute now. You got to back up here. Why did your wife not get to watch it in the beginning? Why was she cut out of this big old Game of Thrones binge from the first time?
I have no idea. She just didn't. I don't think she was interested. I don't think she quite understood what it was. And then by the time it kept going, her friends were talking about it, and she's just like, well, I guess I kind of missed it. But, we can stream it. And I wanted to get caught up again before getting into House of the Dragon, to just because I had just forgotten so many of the characters over time. So, yeah.
Well,
So,
when they have goofy names, it's hard to remember which one was that. And then they show up in other stuff looking like normal, and you go, wait a minute, I do not. How do I know you? It's like when you go to a restaurant and you recognize the person in the restaurant outfit, right?
Right.
And then you see him in the real world, and you go, I think I know you somewhere, but where are you from? You're not wearing what I think I need to have you wear. And that's the same way with the Game of Thrones people.
Exactly. So yeah, so we got caught up on that, and now I'm basically I have twin daughters. One of them enjoys Star Wars, but the other one loves Star Wars and is very much like me. So we've been binging. Well, not binging. We've been watching the Bad Batch cartoon right now as we await Mandalorian season 3. So we did Andor. Now we're on Bad Batch, and that's one of the few shows that I definitely watch like as they come out because I have to get caught up on it.
You've gone back with her and watched the original those films?
Yeah.
Does she think they're really slow and kind of stupid?
No, she loves them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I said, I saw R2D2 and C3PO. When you look at them up close, it's just little crap you have around the house that they glued onto this like trash can. And you go, wow, that's it relates on screen where you go, it looks good. It looks good. Glad to know then you're my sci-fi guy.
Okay.
You're going to have all of that. You have to get into it very deeply, because I do not like Lord of the Rings. Do not even mention Lord of the Rings to me. I don't care about the Lord of the Rings. I don't want to know those people. And that second episode where they were walking forever and got nowhere was like the worst part of my life. Then we get to the third one where they must have had like 5 or 6 endings to this thing. I swear I got up several times thinking that was the end of the movie. And then we came back. So Lord of the Rings, there we are.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I'm your sci-fi guy. And well, and I've been listening to this program for a while, and I think a lot of what you've been talking about, I'm down with. So I definitely hopped into like Fleischman is in Trouble.
Did you like it?
I did. Yeah. We're about halfway through it right now. We just kind of watched the episode last night of where Toby and his ex-wife Rachel kind of how they met and got together, and so we're about halfway through the series right now.
You understand her much better in the end.
Okay.
Because I think in the beginning you think she's kind of a villain, and you think, why did she do this to him? you get a sense of what it's all about as it wears on. But I thought it was very fascinating. I wasn't expecting that to be as good as it was.
Yeah.
So see what happens. And I was on the set of How I Met Your Father. It was in California. Interesting, because there's so much crap on that set. You walk around and you think, how do they even keep track of this to make sure it's going to match up for the next scene? Because it's just junk everywhere. And they use some of the elements from How I Met Your Mother in the set of this. So you would be able to kind of make those connections if you're a big fan of that kind of stuff. They don't shoot in front of a live audience because of COVID.
Okay.
And they do think that someday they'll get back to actually having a live audience. But right now, it's so much easier to shoot with 3 cameras in a set and not have to worry about, we got to stop now because the audience said something.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. It's been fun to watch. I don't think it's as good as the original program, but it's good to pass the time and something to it's something that we can relate to. It's a fun little
filler.
show.
It's the filler that you say, well, we got to watch something. What are we going to watch? Well, I suppose we can watch that. That's exactly one of those shows, right?
Yeah. So, well, enough about me, unless you've got anything else you want to ask.
But, we'll ask. We're going to be asking all the time, so we're going to learn more about you as we go along. But I don't want us to spill everything right now.
Good. That sounds good. Question for you, because the last time you did the show was right around the Golden Globes. Since that time, Oscar nominations have come out. Now, I don't necessarily want you to have to talk about everything, but I just figured, were there any surprises to you? Was it, kind of what you expected? And then we can come back with some future episodes and get a little deeper.
Yeah, there was, the idea that Andrea Riseborough was in a film that like maybe 10 people saw. It made $27,000. It's called To Leslie. She got a Best Actress nomination. That's unbelievable. And all it turned out to be is that there was kind of a concerted campaign on behalf of a lot of actresses who got together and said, nominate her. She's really good. You guys need to put this down. And I did not realize that it's a weighted ballot. But if you got more than 200 first place votes in this weighted ballot, you could get a nomination. And they knew the secret. They were able to get it for her. And then the Academy thought, well, maybe this is a little too much campaigning. We can't have this. And they had a summit meeting this last week and decided, no, it's okay. She can still have the nomination, but we're going to be a little more cautious in the future about social media campaigns for actors and actresses. So it is it's the way everything is. There's some kind of but that was a surprise because I still can't find that film. It's out there somewhere, and I do want to see it, and I hear she is just absolutely marvelous. Now, if she wins Best Actress, you'll know that something was up.
Okay.
Something.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. I thought Fabelmans would do better than it did. And I think that kind of lessens its chances. I do think right now, Everything Everywhere All at Once is the film to beat. That you're going to see a lot of action from. I talked to Michelle Yeoh, and she's so excited about this, the concept of this, that maybe this is going to break the glass ceiling for Asian actors. And she was one of those ones that was just genuinely touched by the idea that they were nominated. And that's cool to see. Jamie Lee Curtis is touched. She comes from a long history of people in the movies. And, it would be really cool to see her win too. And then Yu Kwan, who plays the husband of Michelle Yeoh in the film. And you got to see this. If you haven't seen this film, you must watch it because it's the strangest thing ever. He thought he was never going to work again after Indiana Jones. He thought he was done. And here he's back. And I think that's the story there is so great that I think that's the film that we're going to be looking at as the one to beat.
That story, the side note to that story too, because he was Data in the Goonies, and I read that his lawyer that negotiated his contract for the movie was Chunk.
Oh, yes.
Which is crazy. It was a Goonies reunion for a movie that's now in the Best Picture discussion.
It's fascinating. If you haven't seen All Quiet on the Western Front, this is a remake, a German remake of a film that actually did win back in the 30s, but it's on Netflix now. And it is fascinating to watch, but I really don't know how it got in the Best Picture race instead of RRR, because I thought RRR would be the foreign film that would get a little shot from it.
I did see Western Front over the holiday break. That was just one that I took a little time to watch, and I agree. I enjoyed it. I was just a little surprised it was nominated.
I thought 1917 did a better job of telling the same kind of story. And I like the idea that the camera seemingly didn't cut, that it was just following you around. And this one, when they got into some of the bigger guys, not the guys in the trenches, but the whatever they call them in Germany, I don't know what it is. But when they were just kind of sitting around talking, I was bored. I didn't need that part. So anyway, it's fun to see what's going on, and it's all going to twist and turn before we get to the Oscars in March anyway. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to the Oscars again in the future. We've got a few weeks until the big night. Any shows of note that our listeners should be streaming, or movies streaming or screening right now?
Well, 80 for Brady is coming out, and people say, was this a publicity stunt that Tom Brady decided he was going to retire so they'd give the movie a little push? God, if only that were the reason. But I think it's one of those money grabs that people just go, oh, let's put a bunch of big names in it. Let's put Tom Brady on this thing. We're good. Let's make some money.
Have you seen that? Did you get to screen it?
Not seen it yet. And yes, I will go. I see everything. But it's one of these things that I call a grandma movie. Grandma will love these. And it's with A Man Called Otto. That's a grandma movie that they love. That they'll maybe go to the movies once or twice a year, not unlike you with 2 movies. But they want to see something, and it's pleasant, but it isn't taxing.
Okay.
There's also another kind of movie that I refer to, and that's the divorced dad movie. The divorced dad has to take the kid out at some point on a weekend. And it's usually a lot of those Disney animated films that dad has no desire to see, but he thinks the kid is going to love.
All right. Well, I saw the preview for 80 for Brady, and I looked at it, and I don't know if I need to see this one.
There's nothing there where you say, I got to see this, because it isn't that, but it'll do well. I think it'll do well at the box office. And I think that, grandma's going to the movies this weekend.
All right. And then LA, I know you talked a little bit about the top. Any other fun stories to share from your trip there?
Well, let me think. I did a lot of interviews. It was strange because this is the first time back in 3 years that I've been able to go back and do this. And we had to wear masks the whole time, which was interesting. The actors didn't, which was also interesting. But then there was one interview who said, take the mask off. I can't hear you when you're talking if you've got a mask on. And I thought, okay, this could be the way that ends. It could be the bellwether for all those things to happen. But yeah, so a lot of shows that we'll be talking about from now until summer that I did interviews with, and a lot of interesting young people who are coming from foreign countries and making their mark in the United States. That's I think one of the big untold stories is how many actors from other countries are making it in Hollywood. And it probably boils down to they work cheaper.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and we've got one coming up this week that I want to call your attention to, called Murf the Surf. Did you ever hear of Murf the Surf?
So no, I didn't. I ended up, you mentioned it, so I did kind of a little bit of poking around, and from what I read, this feels like a bit of a cross between Ocean's 11 and Point Break.
It definitely is one of those things where you think, jewel thieves? Where do we find jewel thieves anymore? Do you ever even hear about jewel thieves? No, you don't hear about that. But in the 60s, he was probably the first kind of criminal celebrity. Now we have all those ones on Dateline and God knows what, where it's like, really, I'm not so sure. But he really made people fascinated with this kind of background he had, because Murf the Surf did not kind of look like a thief. He dressed like he was living in Vegas, and he had a string of women that were after him all the time. He was very good at working the media. And R.J. Cutler, the director of the documentary, four-part documentary, said that he reminded him of Donald Trump.
Really?
He would talk and talk and talk. And you know that he was kind of pulling your leg. And he felt that there was a little something more there that really people were latching onto. And he said, I see now why Donald Trump has a following, because there is that charisma.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the same thing with Murf the Surf. People hadn't seen his type before. And so the idea that here's a guy who's blatantly saying, yeah, I robbed the thing, so what? They didn't know how to really handle all of that. And then in years to come after that, we had O.J. Simpson. That was a huge, case where it becomes, what is this? What is this attraction? And that's what they look at in this miniseries documentary. They used a lot of found footage that they had. They did some animation with it. They did voiceovers from actors who would then read transcripts from courtroom situations. So there's a lot of kind of things going on in the course of all of this. R.J. Cutler calls it an archival documentary, as opposed to some of the more current things that he's been doing. He's now working on the Elton John Last Concert documentary. And if you may remember, they had this big kind of thing in Los Angeles for the last part of his tour. And he tracked him through the whole course of all of this. Last year, he did a Billie Eilish documentary about her life, 1 year in her life. Okay. And so he says those are much different, because you don't do research, you're just living with them. You're kind of experiencing the moment as they experience the moment. But a fascinating different way of unfolding somebody's story.
Okay. Yeah, and I know you had mentioned the Elton John documentary that's coming up too, and I did catch Disney Plus aired that live, the final concert from Dodger Stadium. So I'm assuming some of that is part of that was being filmed for this upcoming documentary.
And you'll see him going through the paces and the stuff backstage that you probably wouldn't get elsewhere. Yeah. His family is involved. So there's a lot more to it than just here's a concert. You know how many times we see like, oh, Billy Joel's on and he's doing a concert, and then you just see him sitting at his piano, and that's it. This is a stronger look at, maybe the rigors of doing something like that and what his life has been like.
Now, with Murf the Surf, I did see there was a 1975 film. It was a fiction. Did you ever see that? I think it was called Live a Little, Steal a Lot.
Yes, I remember it, but vaguely, because Murf the Surf did not graze my radar, even though I was around during his heyday. But I don't remember that. And a lot of those films, there were a lot of It Takes a Thief-like films that were coming out, Charade and Caprice, and you name it, and you had Cary Grant in them. You had George Peppard was a big actor in those kinds of things. And they were always like very well-dressed jewel thieves, basically, who then kind of become very friendly with rich people and dupe them. It's very Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, if you need a reference for any of this. And they try to use the people to get to where they want to be. So yeah, I'm sure that movie will be back on. If you look for it, you'll be able to find it. And you go, not exactly what I was thinking Murf was like. Because Murf has a big old gash on his face. And, there's a little kind of disconnect there where he's not as glamorous as you'd like. But he is fascinating, and you do see how he tries to manipulate the media in particular.
Okay. One fascinating piece, too, before we move on, I did see the reporter that actually covered the Murf the Surf case live for the New York Post at the time was Nora Ephron, who went on to do Silkwood and When Harry Met Sally and, all those rom-coms of the 90s.
Yeah, and she was a good reporter. If you go back and read her stuff, it very fascinating stuff to read. And this you'll hear when we do the interview. But I asked RJ about the spelling of Murf the Surf because they spell it Murf. And then I've seen in headlines, when you go and do a little research on this, Murph.
Right.
And, well, what's the right way? Because this is something that drives newspaper people crazy, is what is the correct way of spelling something? If we did, the first question you always need to ask is, how do you spell your name? And if you get that wrong, how do you deal with it? And he answers in the interview how he knows that it's Murf.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of the interview, let's go ahead and cue that up, and then we'll come back and wrap things up.
Okay, the first thing I must know, how do you spell Murf?
It's a good question. It's a good question because you see, you're likely responding to the fact that it's sometimes spelled
in the headlines. It could be a PH, it could be an F,
and that's how people spelled it. This is Murf had a nickname that nobody could agree on the spelling of.
The other thing that struck me is that how much did dressing well have a part in people kind of getting behind him, because he looked like somebody that was respectable.
More than that, he looked like someone who's dashing. Right? He was a natty dresser. He looked like and he was, fit and handsome, right, and had a twinkle in his eye. He looked like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief. And he probably intended to dress like Cary Grant to catch a thief. So there you go. We spell it with an F because that's how he spelt it.
Okay, so he's the ultimate authority in that.
Well, it's his name.
Yeah, he gets to have the nickname that he wants, right? When you looked at this, did you say it needs to be 4 nights, or did it just, as you were putting it together, extended it that?
No, it was as I was researching, it became clear to me that it wanted to be 4 parts, and these are the 4 parts. That the first part would be the jewel, the second part would be the murder, the third part would be his time in prison and finding the Lord, and the fourth part would be his attempts to manipulate his story, or for the narrative of his life to be told as he wished versus what the truth was.
When you talked to him, what kind of a sense did you get of him?
I got the sense that he was very strong-willed, that very clear on what he wanted from this experience, very garrulous, if garrulous means overly verbose and Trumpian in his speech patterns. He would often speak for several minutes at a time.
You can't shut him up then.
I'm describing him. And not unwilling to keep me a little bit off balance in a way that's similar to how the journalists in the series describe it. There are various journalists in the later episodes who talk about, Murf kind of driving them down a dark highway for an hour in the wrong direction to make them feel not at ease. He was not unwilling to do that to me as well.
Did he remind you of anybody that you either knew or you have covered or you have? He
reminded me of the former guy, as
okay.
they said. Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah. I had occasion to spend some time a decade or so ago with the former guy, and so I recognize that in what it was like to kind of.
Would he be a documentary you do, or is that
me?
Yeah.
Him?
No.
I think may he go into the sunset.
Well, you know, when we see these things, is it easier to do it when you're there with them as history is being made, or is it easier doing it this way where you have to research everything?
Well, they're both. These are good questions, but and I thank you. They get to the core of the spice of my life is the variety. I can make on one hand, I can make a film about Billie Eilish where we're there with her for the entire year between her 17th and 18th birthdays, and we tell the story of all the things that happened to her during that year, and we're filming it in the moment, and it's thrilling, and there's that. Or we can make a film like Murf the Surf where we're relying on archive, and the archive is extraordinary and incredibly rich, and we have that to work with, and or a film like Belushi, similarly, these all have their great, their joys and their filmmaking opportunities, and I like to do it all.
When you have the films that you're doing now, I mean, you're doing the Elton John thing.
Yeah. To me, each film is its own riddle. Each film is absolutely its own riddle, and so, the Elton John film is a film about this year, or the year 2022, which was his final year of touring in North America after a lifetime of spent on the road. This is the country where his career began, and his touring career in North America. This is the continent where his career began, and his touring career in North America ended in the city where his career began, which was Los Angeles. And we tell the story of the journey to Los Angeles, back to Los Angeles, even as we tell the story of the first 5 years of his career. So that's a film that kind of weaves together archival and presentation.
When do you get the concept? Do you have to spend time with it for a while before you say, okay, this is what it's going to be?
Yes, I do. And sometimes it evolves during the making of the film. But usually we go into shooting knowing what we're the style. With Billie Eilish, the day I met her, I decided that this wanted to be a purely cinema verite film in the tradition of a film like Don't Look Back, made by D.A. Pennebaker about Bob Dylan in the mid-1960s. But with Murf the Surf, of course, it was clear to me that this was going to be an archival film.
How much of a sell job do you have to do with the people to say, no, I'm going to tell your story the way you want it to be told?
Well, I was very fortunate with Murf the Surf in that our dear friends at Imagine Documentaries brought us the project, asked me if I would be, if I and my company, This Machine, would want to partner with them, if I would direct it, and they had secured the rights to Murf's story already. So I didn't have to sell it to him at all.
Let's work on it. Let's do it.
Yeah, it came ready to go.
Well, that's remarkable.
Yeah,
remarkable.
Very, very fortunate.
When you started doing all of these, where did you think it was going to go? Where did you think this world of yours that you have excelled at? Did you think you'd be doing this still now, or did you think, no, I'll do a different kind of filmmaking?
I embraced a vision that preceded me, and it was the vision of my mentor and his contemporaries, D.A. Pennebaker, and the pioneers of the cinema verite movement. And their vision was that documentary was just like real film. That documentary had a place in our theaters, in your theaters, and a place on your TV sets, and a place at the center of the culture. The documentary could be experienced as cinema and as narrative and as emotional drama, and not only as issue-based agitprop or as education. And I embraced that vision from my very first experience, which was the War Room. And my very first television project was American High, which was a was a documentary equivalent of Beverly Hills 90210. That's how it was designed. The idea was that we would tell stories of coming of age, and and so I thought from then that this, I thought if perhaps if we continued to do this and stood still long enough, the world would come round, and the world has come round.
Coming from the theater, though, wouldn't it seem that you would go into a fictional kind of filmmaking world instead of?
It would. I'm a weird person. My passions from childhood were the theater and journalism, and documentary is truly a combination of both of those great interests.
The way to have the best of both worlds.
For me.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. I think you've done some really...
My colleagues tease me that if I ever wrote a book, it should be called Documentary Filmmaking for theater directors, but that it will only sell 6 or 7 copies.
It's not a natural, really.
And yet here we are.
Yeah, here we are, right? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
All right, Bruce, that was a fun interview. Thanks for sharing that with us. And any parting shots before we sign off for the week?
Well, next week, like I say, I was out in California, so watch out. Have tape recorder will travel, or I guess now digital recorder or iPhone recorder or whatever it is that we deal with. I go back to the days when we actually had cassettes.
That's right.
Somewhere in my vast archives at home, if you want to come, you can listen to Betty Davis talk to me about her grandchildren. And she had a big fight with her daughter. Her daughter had written one of those Mommy Dearest books about her.
Mm-hmm.
And she had her grandson in a TV movie with her. And at the time, and I said, well, how is this having somebody in your own family star with you in a movie? And she says, well, talent skips a generation. And I thought, wow. That she can't give it up. She knew how to hold a grudge. So how do you get back at a daughter that's written a bad book about you? You just really yuncer a good one when we're talking about the grandchildren. So, but next week, I think we should talk to Lakrita. She's one of the stars of the new Night Court reboot. And if you haven't watched it, please watch it, because you'll see John Larroquette's back on. And Melissa Rauch, who was on Big Bang Theory, is the star of it. She plays the daughter of Harry Anderson's character from the first one. And it's interesting how they reboot it, but the one who jumped out at me was Lakrita, who is the bailiff. Okay. And she is, her timing is incredible. And when you hear her story and she talks about how she got into this and what she was hoping for with her career, I think you'll fascinated. So we'll bring that up next week.
All right, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. So Bruce, I appreciate it, and I look
Terry,
forward
welcome.
to doing more of these.
I'm glad to have you here. I miss Chris, but Chris, I wish you all the best. Jared will bring back, and we'll have Jared talk with us too. But movies should be for everybody. So we want to hear everything, and I want to hopefully learn from you, and hopefully I can tell you a few things that you don't know yet either.
All right, thanks, Bruce. And we will be back again next week with another episode of Streamed and Screened.